Good morning and welcome everyone today for our webinar session on corporate tax return and penalty waiver. And my name is Shakti. I'm the head of marketing at Creative Zone Group. With me, I have Zishan, who's the head of tax and accounting at the Creative Zone Group. And we're going to be covering anything and everything about the corporate tax. There are registrations, people who miss registrations, what they can do, and people who have penalties, how and if you can be eligible to waive away that penalty. And largely, our today's webinar is going to be divided into four key subjects. One is we'll start off with the basics, like basics about the UAE corporate tax structure, the key compliance obligations. Then we'll move on to certain common filing errors and how a person or an entity can avoid the penalties that they've got. And lastly, we'll do the tax relief options and record keeping best practices. And obviously, just to note, we'll be taking questions towards the end of the webinar. So if any of you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A section on this live stream, and we'll take it in the last 10 minutes of the webinar. And so let's kick off. Thank you, Zishan, for joining us today. And so let's dive right in. Let's start with some of the basics. So can you walk us through the standard corporate tax rates that are applicable right now in the UAE and how they apply in practice when it comes to a business or an entity?
Sure. So first of all, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this session. It's from a waiver's point of view, it's a little late, but still, it's good to have this now. We still have time to do something about the late registrations that we have done. So just to start off from a basic side of things, from a corporate tax, the standard rates that we have are 0% and 9%. 0% is applicable to your taxable income up to 375,000, beyond which 9% is applicable on anything that's above. Right? So that's the
Okay.
general rates applicable. However, for qualified free zone persons, there is 0% for their qualifying income and 9% on any non-qualifying income.
Okay. So those are just the basics and basic 0%, 9% who
Yes.
it's applicable for. So what is considered as a qualifying income and let's say for a free zone company?
All right. So this is a very key question for a free zone company, and more importantly, for a qualifying free zone company.
Mhm.
Not every free zone may be a qualifying free zone, and hence the companies established within those free zones have to also check that first. So there is a list of qualifying activities that the FDA has given us, and a list of excluded activities.
Mhm.
So any qualifying free zone company needs to be doing those activities, needs to be generating income from those activities. That income from the qualifying activities is considered as qualifying income.
Okay.
All right. So, and anything that you do outside of those, especially the excluded ones, will become your non-qualifying income.
And is there a specific list where these qualifying activities are and who who
Yes.
who maintains and
So
gets these
this,
lists?
as per these are part of the regulations. They've
Okay.
listed these down. They've given a generic definition as well, and there are guides that the FDA has also released that helps you understand what these activities are and whether what you do forms part of this or is excluded from that.
Hmm.
Right. So it's easy to go through that. They've also given case studies and which helps you understand from
Yeah.
a deeper level as well.
Okay.
Just to add to this question, when you're a qualifying free zone person and you're aiming to claim that this relief, there are about 6 7 criteria that you have to meet, which is mandatory. No excuses, right? So some of those are to have adequate substance within the free zone. You have to have audited financials, no activities being done from the excluded list of activities. You have to follow the de minimis criteria. So there are this is these are
Hmm.
there's a list of this criteria that has to be fulfilled. If any one of those are not, then for that year you will not be able to claim the qualifying free zone relief.
Interesting. So there is actually a criteria list. It's
Yes,
like a checklist that all businesses have to
absolutely.
check and do, only then they kind of qualify for
Exactly.
something like this. Interesting. Also, a lot of businesses have different financial years and financial periods that they follow. So many businesses are really unsure about when is going to be their first tax period. So can you just clarify a bit on that?
Sure, absolutely. That's a key question that we get from clients as well, right? So usually this should be identifiable through your legal documents, right? So either your memorandum or your articles of association or article of incorporation sometimes mentions the financial period that you're working towards. So usually it's Jan to December for most companies, but some free zones do have different ones, and some companies opt to have different ones. They can change this financial period via a board resolution and get it done officially with the authorities as well. But in most cases, like I said, it should be identified from your legal documents as well.
Okay. So is there a default that let's say if a company does not resolve this through a board resolution and have established in the last few years, is there a default setting or something that applies with their company formation that it's going to be Jan to December?
Well, there are defaults from different free zones that they do apply. Most free zones do apply the Jan to December one, where there is nothing identified. And when you fill up that registration form with FTA, mostly they do apply either a Jan to December or from your starting license date, the incorporation date.
All right. Okay. All right, so that kind of covers the basic understanding and structure of the corporate tax in UAE. Let's get into some more detailed questions about the obligations. So, Zishan, who is required to register for corporate tax in the UAE?
Right. So all companies in the UAE are required to register. And when I say all companies, I'm excluding the sole proprietors, sole establishments, which are considered as natural persons because of no limited liability. But when I say all UAE companies, then that means excluding that natural person category, everyone else. It also includes foreign companies who have a permanent establishment in the UAE or an access in the UAE. And for natural persons, there is a criteria. If you are doing business activity as a natural person, then we look at, well, the FTA looks at your revenue. If it is above 1 million, then you also have to register for corporate tax as well.
That is as a natural person.
Yes.
So there are different rules that apply for a natural person and different for foreign.
Because generally the thing is that a natural person is not considered taxable unless they're doing a business activity and that business activity generates more than 1 million revenue. That's a leeway that they've given, so that not every, because this is a corporate tax, right? So it is for companies. This is not for individuals. So that's why when an individual is doing an activity which generates more than 1 million in revenue, then they're acting like an entity, right? So that's why that category has also been brought into this regulations, but otherwise this is only for companies.
So does that mean I can safely assume that that individual or a natural person could be a best fit with someone who's maybe freelancing in the UAE, someone who's as a alone freelancing?
Yes.
And is generating a revenue of more than 1 million?
Yes, but it depends on what type of license you get. If you get limited liability license from any free zone, then you're limited liability entity, and then corporate tax applies to you. But if you get a sole establishment license where the liability is unlimited for the company, then that is considered as an extension of one person. Right? So that's where it is considered as a natural person.
Got it. Very clear. Thanks for clarifying that. What are the deadlines for registration and what are the consequences for a business or an entity if they miss the deadlines for, let's say, corporate tax?
Right. So for UAE companies, the deadline is the time period given by the FTA is 3 months from incorporation. Whenever they've incorporated the company, you have 3 months to do your registration.
So from the date of incorporation?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So that's generally for all UAE companies, especially the ones that are being done now. That's very applicable. You have to look at what your incorporation date is, and before the 3 months end, register.
Regardless of if it's a free zone company or a mainland, doesn't matter.
Regardless, this applies to all UAE companies. The other category is the natural persons, right? So when someone qualifies, meaning they have a revenue of more than 1 million, then they have to register by March of next year, within 3 months of their financial year ending, where they have a revenue of more than 1 million.
Interesting. Okay. Fairly clear. Then what about the cases in which the businesses have shut down or have been dormant for a long time? I mean, do they still need to register or file for corporate tax?
All right. So this is a very important question because right now, or even from last year, companies have started to close down, maybe for different reasons, whatever the reasons may be, but they're not fulfilling their CT obligations.
Okay.
So if you have had 1 day in a tax period, then you have to file for that period. You have to be registered as per corporate tax. You have to file for the period that you have been active until the license has closed down, and then file a deregistration. So that's the complete process that you have to follow, regardless of whether you've had 1 day or 3 months or 6 months or 1 year. It doesn't matter. If you've had one day, you have to be registered for that one day. You have to file for that one day.
Okay. Even if it's just been 1 or 2 days of from the date of incorporation and 2 days later, let's say the business shuts down, you have been active in those 2 days, so you'll have to register
Yes,
and file.
because so
Okay.
there is two things that we have to look at. One, because this is the first filing period, a lot of companies are looking at how the transition rules apply
Mhm.
and all of that applies. But for any person that is opening up a company now, they have from a first day, they have that day included in their tax year.
Mhm.
So that's why they have to do this for every day that they're active in the tax year. Now, the companies that were there before last year, for companies who did not have any day in the tax year, those companies did not have to. But if they had one day even, in that tax year included before their license got canceled,
Mhm.
they would have to have this
Interesting.
done.
Interesting. Okay, let's move on to the next question, which is more, technical on the accounting side, how companies should maintain. So what accounting standards or accounting basis should businesses follow? Are there certain standards that they need to follow so that they're able to file later on? Or
Yes.
could you just throw some light on that?
Yes. So the default standards are the IFRS that
Okay.
every company has to follow. There are some leeways given by the authorities as well, and there are additional things as well. So when a company has revenue of more than 50 million,
Hmm.
they have to also have audited financials.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. When they're below a certain amount, they're allowed to use the IFRS for SMEs. That's less stricter or a more simplified version of the IFRS. And if your revenue is below 3 million, then you can also use cash basis accounting as well. So
Interesting.
it's
So there are like more or less three slabs. One is 0 to 3 million, then there's 3 to 50, and there is 50 plus.
yes,
So all of them have to maintain it in a little different way. There are stricter obligations and audits that happen. The more
absolutely.
revenue that a company makes. Okay.
Absolutely. That's something that the UAE has been good with, so that it allows the companies of its size to take in the measures according to its size.
Okay. Got it. Thanks for that. So when must the corporate tax return be filed? I mean, what are the things that it depends on? And what are the dates for different businesses who have established at different times of the year? But when is the corporate tax filing that needs to be done for each of the businesses?
And so this is why identifying your tax period is extremely important, because all of this gets tied to that.
Okay.
So the deadline for corporate tax returns is 9 months from your financial year ending,
Ending. Okay.
right? So whether it is
Interesting.
December, whether it is March, whatever it is, it's 9 months
Mhm.
from that. Even if you have, let's say, a 10-day tax period because you've closed down the company on 10th January, your tax period would be 1st Jan to 10th Jan, and then you would have 9 months to do, well, you would have 3 months to do the deregistration and then file accordingly. But for those 10 days, you will have that time period to file the return.
Interesting. So that means majority of the companies are going to fall in either the end of September deadline. That's for the financial years which do Jan to December,
Yes.
and the others who have a April to March financial year, their deadlines are going to be in December. So the
Yes.
two key dates, this is for the viewers, are going to be one in the end of September and one in the end of December. So obviously you have to make sure that depending on how much revenue your business makes, and so what kind of accounting methods you need to be following, and if audits are required or not, again, depending on your revenue that your company is making. Thanks for clarifying that. A very interesting point. Are businesses required to keep records? And if yes, for how long?
All right.
Accounting records.
So businesses are required to keep records for about 7 years.
Mhm.
Well, 7 years. You have to keep records of your income, how you've used up any reliefs, what are the bases on that, any supporting documents that you need to prepare your financials, that has to be kept for a period of 7 years.
Okay, got it. Just a quick reminder for all our viewers, please, you can put your questions in the Q&A section of the live stream, and we'll take it during the end of the webinar. This is for people who have maybe might have joined a little later. We're taking Q&As in the last 10 minutes of this webinar session. So please feel free to drop your questions, and we'll try and take as many of them as possible. Let's get back. What is transfer pricing, and when is it applicable for an entity?
All right. So, although this might not be a relevant question for most people, because this is applicable only when you have related parties. Not every company in the market would have a related company. When you have related companies, you have to deal with those related companies in a way that is based on an arm's length principle, which
Okay.
means that you have to deal with a related company as you would do a external third party, right? So that is
What do you
where.
mean by a related company?
So by a related company, we mean where the shareholders are the same. I would have maybe two companies or three companies. All of those companies
Understood.
with each other are related companies because I am the sole owner for those, and they have that connection through me as the common shareholder,
So
right?
majorly for group of let's say there's a group on top and they have
Yes.
multiple entities, businesses.
Yes, absolutely. There is
Right.
a
Okay.
criteria for that. When we look at related companies, there's a detailed criteria where we can identify whether someone is a related company or not based on certain percentages. But that is when transfer pricing comes in. And then it becomes more and more important to make sure you follow those principles that are based in the laws and the standards as well, to make sure that you're doing any transactions between the related companies as
Right.
per those laws.
Correct. Of course. And needless to say, it's Creative Zone consultants. We as consultants, we provide all that consultation. So you can always reach out to Creative Zone if you have any queries with respect to corporate tax and anything to do with tax in the UAE. All right, so that kind of covers the obligation side of it. Let's get into more on the filing side of it. So what are some of the common errors that businesses tend to make during corporate tax filing?
Okay. All right. So before I go into that, I want to just highlight the penalties that are there
Sure.
for non-compliance, and which can also be because of mistakes as well, right?
Right.
So starting from the registration, there is a late registration penalty of 10,000, which I think the market is fully aware of by now. A lot
Hmm.
of companies would have suffered that as well. Then the filing penalty comes in. If you do not file within the stipulated time, there is a 1,000 penalty for that. Then the deregistration penalty is also there, which is also 1,000. And that's the core three things that you have to be aware of. Now, when we talk about the errors that a
Hmm.
company can have, the main errors are related to the things that we've discussed. One, late registration, which is a very common thing that we've actually seen.
And what's the penalty for late registration again?
10,000.
10,000.
Right, so
That's a huge sum of money.
that's a
Yeah.
massive penalty. That
Right.
more than some people spend on setting up their license. So
Right.
it's a big thing. Then another common mistake that does happen is by people not understanding what accounting standards they have to use,
Hmm.
and hence wrong treatment can be applied to the transactions that they have
Hmm.
within the company. Then misunderstanding the reliefs and wrong treatment of those reliefs.
Hmm.
That's a very important thing, because if you do not understand how a small business relief applies to you and you're counting on that, that becomes an issue. If you file it wrongly and then you have to change things, or FTA finds out and then you have to redo things.
Right.
Same thing with qualified free zone reliefs. If you do not understand the criteria,
Right.
then obviously you will not be able to do it properly, and then it will cause issues. Another thing, well, transfer pricing is something that we
Yeah.
discussed. That's also not understood properly. So mistreatment of that will also be something that is common, right? So, and then anything from a group point of view, how groups are treated, whether you
Hmm.
form a tax group, if that is not done right, then that can also be an issue that you face.
Right. Right.
So these are some of the main things.
The common
Well,
mistakes that
the
some of
major
them.
categories that
Yeah.
I can put major mistakes into.
Right. And obviously, an entity or a business needs to take care of this because obviously no business wants penalties, right? That's bad debt for you.
Absolutely.
All right. So you briefly spoke about tax relief. So what tax reliefs are available and how can businesses qualify for certain tax reliefs?
All right. So there are several reliefs available, which is something that FTA has done to allow companies to transition into corporate tax
Hmm.
in an easier manner, right? So the first one that's more common is the small business relief. It is applicable to companies who have revenue of less than 3 million. However, this is only applicable until the year 2026 for the filing of
Okay.
2026. So they've given a 3-year period where companies can enjoy this and they can transition into corporate tax officially.
Interesting.
So for smaller companies. Then the next relief that is there is obviously the qualified free zone relief. That's also a common one. But again, you have to understand the criteria and how you can be eligible for that. That's an important thing. Then you have the foreign permanent establishment relief. You have a group relief as well. You have a tax group relief as well. You have foreign tax credit relief as well. So these are some of the reliefs that are there. And then there is a business restructure relief as well. So if the
Okay.
company is changing owners or is restructuring, there is also a relief for that. So
Interesting.
um,
So a lot of reliefs put in place by the government because obviously corporate tax is something which is new. Again, it was only introduced recently. So the first 3 years, you're saying there are a lot of reliefs, and so till
the,
2026, you're saying
so the other reliefs are available for the longer
for
period,
the longer period.
for forever. The small business relief is
Small
only
business
until
relief,
2026.
2026. Interesting. Okay, Zishan, you also touched upon the late registration. People who have registered late, they tend to have fines. So obviously, there will be a lot of companies out there which have gotten these fines for late registration of corporate tax. And we know that there are some waivers that the government is open for. So can you explain how that late registration penalty waiver works? Who becomes eligible for it, and what are the different steps that a business might need to follow for
Sure.
that?
So recently, I believe in May and towards the end of May, FTA has come up with this waiver that's allowed for companies who have late registration fines.
Hmm.
That is the 10,000 fines, 10,000 K fine. If you are someone who has that fine, what they've allowed is if you can file your return within 7 months instead of the normal 9 months, then you can get this waiver applied to you, and this
Okay.
gets applied automatically. What you have to do is make sure that your filing is done within the 7 month period. So just to give an example on this is, if you had financial period or a tax period of Jan to December and you did not do the registration on time and you have a 10K penalty, you have to make sure that you've done your filing within July, which is this month, which leaves about 15 days. If you do this month, then this waiver becomes applicable on you.
All right, so you have to file for corporate tax
Yes.
within a certain time period to
Yes.
waive away the registration, late
Exactly.
registration that you had.
Exactly.
Interesting. Interesting. Is there anything else outside of that, or that's the only?
They've kept it very simple.
All right.
Instead of the nine
Interesting.
months, you just have 7 months to
Yeah.
do this. So
Makes sense.
they've not complicated it. They want people to benefit from this.
Yeah.
That's why they're not trying to get more revenue or to
Yeah.
help companies. This is the first year.
Right.
They're trying to help as much as they can with these waivers, with the reliefs, so that
Interesting.
it doesn't become a burden to open up a company and run that
Interesting.
company in the UAE. It actually helps.
Interesting. So that's for our viewers actually very important. I mean, if any of your businesses have any penalties that have come in place, especially with respect to the late corporate tax registration, reach out to us and we can really guide you through and see how you can become eligible to waive away that 10,000 penalty for
Yes.
registration.
Just to add to that, please do it as soon as possible, because
Absolutely.
we only have 15 days left now.
Yeah.
And it's not just that you can just do the filing right away when you decide to.
Filing takes time.
You need to first do your books if they're not done.
Yeah.
If they're done, you need to review them as per CT so that you make sure it does not have any mistakes, any errors. That process has to happen before the filing can happen.
Right.
And the filing can only happen once everything is final, you confirm everything, and then we submit things onto the portal. And i'm I think normally what happens is towards the last few days there are glitches as well,
Yeah.
so it's better to avoid that.
All right.
So essentially I would say you would have 10 to 12 days to get this done, do the bookkeeping and do the filing, and get the
Interesting.
penalty waived
Interesting.
off.
Interesting. So again, for our viewers, only 15 days. If you have any penalties, you just have 15 days till end of this month to have those waived away. So time is of the essence.
One more thing just
Yeah.
I would like to add. We've also seen situations where companies who have paid the 10K penalty would also be able to get this refund. Right.
Interesting.
So that's also for anyone who's paid that
Okay.
penalty, do this.
Interesting. All right. All right. So we're kind of nearing towards the end of it. So the last part, let's touch upon some strategies for cash flow and long-term planning. So from a financial planning perspective, what strategies would you recommend to manage that impact of tax on your business?
All right. First thing is, we need everyone who's running a company to have their mindset changed, first of all.
Mhm.
This was not there before, but it is there now, and it is going to stay. It's not going to, not be there, not applicable to you, anything. It is going to stay. So this needs to be a topic in your overall yearly planning that you do, right? So because you have to adjust for that amount that you would have to pay, that's 9% or anything above
Mhm.
375, plus actually paying out, you need to have cash flow. You have to have cash, that much cash to
Right.
actually pay to the FTA. at the right time, right? So you have to adjust for that. So make sure this becomes a discussion in your planning discussions. Also, what needs to also be accounted for is having a cash amount well put away every month so that you can use that for fulfilling this liability.
All right.
From a tax point of view, you need to also consider whether is applicable to you or not, and all of these things become part of your monthly discussions, your yearly planning, your budgeting,
So a
your
lot of
forecast.
forecasting goes into it in terms of how much
Yeah.
revenue also you're going to be
Yes,
making.
if you don't want it to become a burden, then yes, you
Yes.
should
Okay.
plan it better
All right.
for the year, for September, or whenever your due
Deadline is.
date is, whenever you plan to file this has to be a topic that gets
All right.
discussed and addressed.
Right. So that also there, so that there is no last minute rush. We
Exactly.
don't want to be doing any last minute
Last
filing.
minute things is always
Yeah.
going to, well, it then opens up room for mistakes,
Right.
which causes penalties.
Right.
And we don't want to do that. We're trying to save
Right.
money. We're trying to be smart about how we manage taxes as well.
Right.
But we don't want to, put it for the last minute and then have penalties occur because of some silly mistakes that we did.
All right. So basically, corporate taxes, it's no longer just a compliance obligation, right? It's actually a core part of your business strategy.
Yes.
Interesting. All right. Thanks for all those very interesting topics that we covered, Zishant. Now we're going to get to all the questions. We'll try and take as many as possible. So let's kick off with some questions that we have. So the first question that we have from our viewer is, what are corporate tax reliefs for a free zone person? I believe we touched upon this, but maybe if you
Yes.
can brush it up again.
Yeah. So for corporate tax, from a free zone point of view, if you are a free zone company, first you need to understand whether you're part of a qualified free zone. You should be able to check that with your free zone. They should be able to tell you that. And then you need to understand what are the requirements of actually claiming that relief, which means looking at the list of activities, the qualifying activities, the excluded activities, also the criteria that you need to fulfill. Audit is one of them, adequate substance is one of them, electing or not electing for a standard application is also one of them. So that is a detailed discussion to have.
All right. Another question from our audience. The question is, if a 1-year-old Free Zone LLC sole owner did not make any revenue, that is net loss, which includes paid startup expenses, finance expenses, marketing expenses, does the company need to have audited financials, or can they do their tax filing themselves based on their cash basis calculation of the expenses?
All right, so there are a couple there are a few things that I need to address here. One is they mentioned that it's a sole company.
Yes, sole owner.
So by sole company, I'm assuming you mean a sole proprietorship.
Yeah, it's
If that is the case, that means that you're a natural person.
okay.
If that's the case, if you're a natural person and your revenue is below 1 million, you don't need to do anything. That's the first thing.
Don't even need to register?
No.
Okay.
Because that you're being considered as a natural person and this
All
does
right.
only apply to companies. However, if you mean that you're a sole owner who has a LLC company, then things change. Then CT applies to you. Then you should have registered at the right time when
Okay.
the deadlines were there. Since you've established 1 year ago, there would have been deadlines last year, and based on that, you should have registered.
All right.
Right. So that's the first thing. A second part of this was expenses only.
Yeah. Does the company need to have audited financials?
Okay, so audited financials are not necessary if you're doing a standard CT filing.
Okay.
But if you're doing a qualified free zone person filing, then yes, audited
yeah.
financials is needed. And also, there was a part of that was whether
Can I do my tax filing myself, cash
well,
basis?
if you have knowledge about IFRS, or let's say IFRS for SMEs,
Yeah.
or even the cash basis accounting, then whichever is applicable, do that yourself and then file accordingly. You need to understand what are the CT adjustments that need to be done for the year-end financials, and then accordingly do the filing.
Most importantly, don't make mistakes.
Yes.
If you're doing it yourself.
If you have confidence that you will not make mistakes,
All right.
and you can do this yourself, then it's
Okay.
fine. Go ahead.
Great question. Does Creative Zone have accountants who can do all this on the client's behalf?
Yes, definitely. That's what we do as a core thing. We can do books for you. We can do CT registration, filing, deregistration, what is applicable, whatever is applicable, plus VAT services as well. If your company is eligible for VAT as well. So all of these are things that we can package for you in a deal which is helpful for you, affordable for you. So
all right. I think another viewer of ours, I think they must have joined late. They're asking, what is the corporate tax rate for small business owners?
well, if So if you're asking about a small business relief, then based on that small business relief, it is 0%. You don't have to pay taxes. But if you're just asking about a small company which has a smaller amount of revenue,
I think it's smaller revenue.
so
That's the
if
question.
that's the question, then it's 0% up to 375,000 of taxable profit, and above that is 9%.
Okay. So up to 375K annual net profit, taxable profit, it's
0%.
0%. And after that,
It's
it's
9%.
9%. All right. Another question that just came in. If a company has a mix of UAE revenue and international revenue, does all the revenue need to be included on the filing or only the UAE revenue?
No, everything.
Everything needs to be included.
It's supposed to be a company-wide thing, not UAE jurisdiction
Jurisdiction
thing.
wide.
So anything that the company earns, that needs to be considered as taxable revenue.
So everything needs to be filed, all the
Yes.
revenue from different regions. Okay. Another question, is there a link where I can rewatch the webinar? Of course, there is a link. We will share the live recording with everyone who joined us today on email after the session, and you can obviously view it again. And will you be sharing any written documents or materials? I think best for that is that you can obviously go to our website as well. There's a lot of information there on Creative Zone, or you can just feel free to call us using our contact number, and you can speak to get a free 30-minute consultation with any of our tax consultants. Another question, if a company does not have a well-maintained accounting and billing documentation, is there a way to reset and start fresh?
Well, you can't reset. You'll have to do whatever is possible, because you can't say that today I will start from zero. I'll start doing accounting properly from today. Yes, you have to do that. You should start today if you've not already done that. But it's not like the previous things will not get accounted for, or you don't have to file for the previous things. You still have to file for the previous things. Whatever information that you have, you're required to maintain it for 7 years. But again, if you don't have anything, there is not much you can do. If you can try to dig up information, that should be done as a standard process. But start today. At least start today.
Okay. Another question, please confirm if TP is applicable, I guess transfer pricing. Please
Yes.
confirm if transfer pricing is applicable while fund transfer between related company.
Yes, so transfer pricing becomes applicable on any transaction that happens between related companies, right?
Interesting.
So the detailed discussion on that is a very extensive one,
Mhm,
because you need to look at the nature, you need to look at the market values of that fund transfer, and
mhm,
why is that being done, what is the purpose,
mhm.
and XYZ. A lot of things that need to go into that. But yes, generally, yes, it will be applicable.
How long will corporate tax registration penalty waiver take? Let's say we all obviously covered that it's only have 15 days, but is that time sufficient to kind of do all the documentation so that a company can waive away that penalty if they have?
Well, the thing that you need to do from from a get being applicable for that waiver is just file. The
Hmm.
documentation would be, because this, you need to understand that this filing is for 2024,
Hmm.
right? So for financial year 2024, you would already have those documentation. You just need to make sure that your financials are closed properly. You make the adjustments for corporate tax that you need to do. Any adjustments from transfer pricing element that needs to be factored in. And once you have the final return ready, you can just file it. You don't need to provide these documentation to FTA at that point. That's not required. You just need to have your financials and submit those and do the filing accordingly.
All right. That brings us to the end of our webinar session. Again, thank you to all our viewers who joined in today. Thank you, Zishan, for a very insightful session we had. And just for our viewers, if you guys have any further questions, feel free to drop us an email at tax@creativezone.ae, or you can also go to our website, Creative Zone, find our phone number, find our email addresses, and just feel free to email us, call us. We're always there to support all our clients, and internal or external. And thank you once again for taking out the time and joining us today. And have a nice day. And thank you. Thank you, Zishan.
Thank you. Just to sum this up as a final thing, as a summary of everything,
Sure.
it applies, corporate tax applies to all companies, all UAE companies. You have to file, you have to register on time. Otherwise, there's a 10K penalty. And if you've done that late registration, now is the time to get your waiver being applicable for you. You need to file now. Filing is within a 9-month period in general, but for the waiver to be applicable, you have to do this in 7 months. Then if you have a company that's closed down or is closing, you need to make sure that it is deregistered also properly, and then make this part of your normal discussions, your monthly or your board meetings, or anything that you need to do from a strategic point of view. Make corporate tax a discussion point in that as well. Right. So yeah, and thank you once again for joining in.
Thank you. Thank you, Zishan. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.